I would like to hand over and say welcome, Antoni, and thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing with us.
The honor is absolutely mine. Thank you for having me. By the way, it was 6 weeks of vacation. It wasn't 5 weeks. 5 weeks is too little, so I needed 6 weeks.
No. There's a problem here.
Well, you know, being self-employed, I did check emails and things like that. I usually say I have 3 kids. I have Elliot, Milton, and my company, and they all need love, even in the summertime. For me, it's summer. I guess it's winter for you guys now. But yeah, and it was really fun to be with you the last time as well, even though I had this really boring talk about tech stuff and all that. But still, it was kind of, you know, it was good. It was good to be with you guys. This is fun. I mean, you know, I started working yesterday. So thank you for letting me warm up with you guys. In my breakout room, I asked them if the sound was okay, because I just switched cables and they said it was okay. So hopefully it will be that for you as well. You know, every time I do this for my colleagues, for my fellow peers, I get a bit intimidated. I'm going to admit things now that I don't admit to other people, but what I'm going to do to you guys is kind of, what can I possibly give to you that you don't already know? You know, what can I give to people who are better than me or more successful than me and brighter than me? And I mean, I've seen some of you already. I'm impressed. And then I got the question from Melanie, if I can come, and I said, of course, yeah, I'm flattered. Let me do it. And then I'm saying, oh my God, what can I share with you guys? I don't know. But I do have some things, and I've learned over the years that, you know what? Some of you might say, already knew it. Some of you might say, I needed that right now. That was good. I wanted that. I might have known it already, but the timing was perfect. Thank you. So, you know, whoever, you know, want to listen to this, it's great. We're going to have a conversation as well. I know that there's going to be some sort of dialogue at the end as well. So we're going to have time for that as well. What else is there? Melanie and I discussed what angle to take on this session. You know, it could be many different ways of talking about storytelling. But then we decided on that kind of provocative or thought-provoking title, Don't Tell Stories. And let me tell you right now, you can absolutely tell stories. It's a matter of how you share that story and the results you get depending on how you share it. So that's what we're going to focus on now. You know, a couple of different ways of sharing a story, not only reporting a story. That's kind of my mantra in this one. Don't just report an incident. No emotion's going to come out of that. You need to kind of be more active in it. Be yourself plus 10% or something like that. That's probably good. I have written down a script here, but I'm going to check it from time to time so I don't miss anything. One of the things I'm thinking about when it comes to keynote speeches overall is that I believe that our ultimate goal is to facilitate change. You know, some sort of change, a new mindset, a new action, a new first baby step towards something new. That's what we do. Otherwise, why should we speak? You know, we need to have plant a new thought in people's minds or whatever. And what you need in order to do that are 2 things. You need memorable content and you need emotions. If you only have content, you will get more of an understanding intellectually, perhaps, and that's fine. But if you also add the emotions to it, that kind of drives you to an action, that's when you have both of them. So that's what you need. You need kind of content and emotions. 2 things. And let me share an example with you from when I failed completely. I mean, I think that's a good way to start. Let me just talk about how I failed. So let me go back now with you guys, 22 years in time. So this is 22 years ago, and I'm walking down this street in Telecom Valley, Kista, Stockholm City, on the street, and I was working at a company called Ericsson. Do you know Ericsson? Anyone? Hands up, the global telecom company. Yeah, okay, so I was working for them. I was walking there down the street, and then I saw this guy locking eyes with me, and then just moved like a missile towards me, crossing the street. And I'm thinking, what is this? Is this a serial killer or a maniac, whatever? So I just stopped, thinking, yeah, he better come to me. And he came closer and he said, it's you, he said. And I said, it's me. Who are you? You know what? I'm one of your colleagues. I was with you guys and the crew in Boca Raton in Florida when you presented. I saw you present. And I remember it, of course. It was one of my first things I did at Ericsson at the time. So I was presenting something about knowledge sharing and business intelligence and all of those kind of things. I wanted them to share knowledge with each other and with me, because I knew that we had lots of information if we just shared it. That was my goal. So I said, yeah, I was presenting at that time. So you were there? Yeah. And I just wanted to say, you were awesome. And, you know, I grew an inch, you know, woo. And I said, thank you. And then he said, I don't remember anything you say, but you were awesome. And then I shrank an inch instead. I was kind of thinking, okay, so thank you again. And we talked a bit more, and he had no clue. He had no clue of what I talked about, nothing. But he had that emotional feeling. You know what, the kind of the proverb, I can't remember what you said about how you made me feel and how that is important. Well, it is important, but it's not the only thing. That's why I talked about content as well, and it should be memorable. So I believed I failed. I mean, completely I failed in that case. It was all about the gift wrapping and nothing about the actual present in the presentation that I wanted to give him. I remember the presentation because I did 3 days of presentation skills training with this obnoxious guy from New York who trained me, and I had a world record at Ericsson of only 6 slides in 20 minutes. I think it still holds. It's kind of, you know, big companies, many slides, that's kind of how it goes. But there was nothing on them that they could grasp, you know, their attention to, nothing concrete, nothing, everything was abstract. Just a few words, that's it. So I think that from that time, 22 years ago, I started to think, you know, long and hard, something is wrong here. I need to do something about it. What is it that I didn't succeed with? I mean, it's good that he liked me, but what else? Because I didn't get any response from the actual presentation apart from that applaud right afterwards. I needed more, and I needed to facilitate action, and I didn't get any action of it. So I guess that's when I started to look into, you know, how do I hone my skills here? I thought I was a pretty good presenter, and I perhaps was on the surface, but I needed to do more. And that's when I started to add stories, analogies, metaphors, going from the abstract to the concrete, from the unknown to the known. And when I started my own company then in 2006, so it's 15 years now, I kept on going with stories. Now, the problem was that my stories were seldom about me. I talk about communication, I talked about marketing, I talked about things like that. And it was more like, you know, like how many other people talk about that, you know, the Googles, the Apples, the Ubers and all those things. Yeah, good stories. Some of them were about me, but they were always harmless. There was nothing kind of that stood out really. So it was okay. I was kind of developing along the way more and more, but I wasn't really there. And you know what, even though I got that bronze medal, I still am not there. I know there's always something more to do. And by the way, that bronze medal is kind of the unofficial championship of Sweden, Swedish storytelling. So it wasn't like a big thing. It was a small thing, but it's a fun thing. So I decided to just use that as one of those things. By the way, I do have a document with 25 memory hooks for the audience. So if you want that, you can just hook me up on LinkedIn, add me there, and I can send it to you. I think it's pretty valuable for all of us. Some of them you might say, yeah, I know that, but some of them can say, oh yeah, that's a smart thing. That's something I can do to make the audience remember more. And storytelling is, of course, key. Is one of the core things in it. So what else is there I can talk about that? Okay, so let's go into the actual topic. Don't tell stories. That's what the kind of the headline was. And what I really mean with that is don't just tell a story as a news anchor reporting something. Be in the story. Be the story. Act out. Be a little bit more of an actor. You don't have to be an actor, but you have to kind of make that. You don't have to do anything. But from my side, I think it's worthwhile to just put some more emphasis into to kind of color the story, make people feel that they're inside the story so they can see and hear and feel and touch and smell whatever you say. If you can get them to be inside the story and experience it almost like a movie inside their heads, that's when you really have reached in, not only reached out to them, but you reached into their brains as well. And I'd like to try a couple of stories with you that I sometimes tell. And I will do it in two ways. I will do it with some emotions into it and acting into it, and then reporting the story. And then perhaps if one of you can kind of raise your hand and see if you can take one of your short anecdotes of 2 minutes and do the same thing. We'll see if you want to. Otherwise, I just keep going. So here's one of my favorite short anecdotes, a story I sometimes tell when I talk about the art of listening, kind of big part of communication. If you don't have empathy and listening skills, what do you have? So I talk about listening. I talk about listening on different levels and all that. And then I tell this short story. When I have two sons, I have Elliot and Milton, as you heard. When Milton, a super communicator, Lacinai 2.0, when he was only 6 years old, I turned to him and I said, can you tell me the difference between hearing and listening? And Milton looked up at me and said, you're the consultant, you should know. And then I said, well, I know, but I'm interested in what you think about that. Okay, Dad, pay attention, he said. To be able to hear is simply to not be deaf. But to listen, Daddy, that's when you really try to understand what the other person is saying, and not only saying, but also what they mean. Do you get it? And I looked at my son for 3 silent seconds. And then I said, welcome to the company, my son. That's the story. I'm acting out in the story. Do you feel that I'm acting out? Give me a kind of hand wave or something. Yeah? Okay, so that's kind of the story. What if I told that story in a completely different way? What if I said, I have two sons, Elliot and Milton. Milton was 6 years old when I asked him, what is the difference between being able to hear and being able to listen? And he explained to me that being able to hear is basically not being deaf, while being able to listen is more like being attentive and try to understand what the other person is saying. And actually not only saying, but also what they mean. And of course, when he said that, I welcomed him to my company. Can you feel the difference? Hey, Melanie's kind of blah. No. So that's kind of, for me, the difference between being in the story, helping you feel that little boy of 6 years old, the smart ass, and then me kind of having that discussion with him. So that's kind of a way to talk about how do you do something more with the material than just taking the story from step to step. I have another one. I think I will take that one as well. Okay, so here's another one. This is one I sometimes tell when I have a new audience, I have plenty of time, and I want to just set the scene of why I am the person you should listen to. Because it ends with me saying that this was 25 years ago. I've been searching the keys for communication, human communication, ever since, and I kind of build that credibility. But it starts like this. So it was the summer of 1992, and it was in the middle of the night, a warm summer night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was trying to go straight back home. I couldn't go straight because I was a bit drunk. So I was walking like this. I've been out on a bar round with my friends. And I'm walking towards my apartment building, and it's up on a hill, so I have to go kind of steep up there. Halfway up that hill, I meet 2 kids younger than me, about 17, 18. And one of them says, "Hey, you." And I looked at them and said, "Huh? Do you have a cigarette?" And I said, "No." And I tried to walk on, and then he said, Stop. Hand me your wallet." And I said, "No." And then I tried to go again. And the second guy reached into his pocket and brings out the gun. And he says, "Are you sure about that?" And I looked at them again and I said, "No." And then I gave them the wallet. They took the wallet, and it took like 15, 20 seconds. They talked to each other. For me, it was an eternity. And then I got the wallet back. And I said, "Do I get the wallet back?" "Yeah," they said, "because you had such good answers to my question." And I'm thinking, no, I did not. The only thing I said was one word. But then I tried to be their friend instead. So I say, "Okay, what's the deal with the gun? It's easy to get the gun. Why do you have it?" "Well, my girlfriend broke up, blah, blah, blah." And I was thinking, that's an overreaction. So what I did after that was I took my wallet out. I took 2 VIP tickets to a nightclub. And I said to them, go and have some fun, guys, instead. Just go and have some fun. What is that? There's 2 tickets to the nightclub. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, they are yours. Have some fun. Oh man, that's so nice. Thank you. Isn't that nice? Yeah, that was a nice day. And then we talked about that. And all I thought in my head was that, got you. I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to say that they are in that nightclub, 8 o'clock, 2 punks with a gun. Get them. Of course, I didn't say it to them. But then I said instead, you know what? I'm tired now. Well, we are tired too. So let's go. And they walked away and they said, oh, what a nice guy. And I walked away saying, they were so idiots. And then I walked back home, came to my apartment, sat down on my bed. My girlfriend at the time was sleeping there. I sat down and I couldn't lie down. I just couldn't, because now I understood. Now I was sober, 24 years old. I could have been dead at that point. What was it I did? What was it that I did that made me not even got a punch in the face? Nothing. I got my wallet. I didn't get a bullet hole in me. Nothing. And ever since that time, I think it was actually that pivotal moment, I've been searching for the keys, the success factor to communication between people in order for us to get along and build relationships and be good together. Well, that's it. That was a story. It's a true story. I don't make anything up of this. This is a true story. Actually, I went to the police, by the way, and they said, you never got robbed, so what's the problem? So they didn't do anything with it. So I just had to say, okay, fine. And then I went home. What if I told that story? Because that's a pretty strong story. I think it's a pretty strong story. I mean, people kind of relate to it, say, oh my God, you could have been killed. What if I told that story in a really boring way? What if I said, you know what, it was 1992, I went up the street, 2 guys tried to rob me, and then they didn't. They gave me the wallet back, and it was all good, and I went home and I couldn't go to sleep because I was a bit upset. You know, it doesn't give as much. You need the details, you need the emotions into it, you need to pause at the right time, just taking it down a notch, because this is a serious story, perhaps talking a bit more silent, and all of those things are in it. How about attempted robbery? Carol says, well, yeah, well, the policemen in my district didn't care, at least. So they had other priorities. That's it. Thank you, Melanie. Adding flavor. That's what we talk about, adding flavor to the story. So I do believe that there is a place for actually adding those flavors. And if you do that, more people will be emotionally engaged, because you are emotionally engaged and invested in the story. Thereby, they will be it as well. Of course, you can go overboard with it. You can go completely bananas and it will be too much of a show or something like that. But doing it right, I think actually it will help you. It has helped me at least a lot during all this time. So the question is, you know, when is it appropriate to act out, and when is it appropriate to hold back? And I can't say that I have the correct answer, but I would like to have your, I have an idea at least, but I would like to have your ideas about this. So how about you going into the chat now and give us your answers? When is it appropriate to act out, and when is it not? What's your opinion? Share it with us. Thank you, Jonathan. When it conveys the message more effectively. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, basically, you just nailed it. When you're demonstrating something important, bring more emotion. Speaking in present tense, it's more powerful. Yes, Michael, I'm still doing most of my stories in past tense, but I'm experimenting with this right now, because I believe that you're right. It brings even more emotion into it. Yeah, too much overacting. Yeah, exactly. If it's too much, yeah, good, thank you. If it's too much, it becomes fake, or it becomes, it's like having too many spices in your food. You can't eat it. It's just too much. So you need to kind of find that balance, you know, to have it in the right balance. When you describe a specific event and add more emotions to it, act out when wanting to drive a message home, and quiet when you want to connect it. Good stuff. That's what I'm saying. You know, who am I to tell you how to talk about this story? This is so good. In Sweden, we have, in NSA Sweden, we have something we call collegial listening. That's when we invite colleagues to be part of our gig. So we said, you know, I have 2 free tickets. Do you want to come? And then people always come. And then they learn, they hear you, so they can recommend you afterwards, and they also give you feedback. So this is an excellent. If you don't do it, do it. This is a really good way to get that feedback from professional speaker colleagues. It's friendly, but it's also very direct. So you have to be able to have some thick skin at least, because you know they will not be saying just, oh, that was nice, but they will say in minute 3 you did that. Why did you do that? You should have done this instead. So they can be really, you know, detailed in their feedback. And I remember one of those occasions where I have a friend called Hans, a speaker colleague who's becoming a friend. And I invited him to one of those speeches, and he came, and afterwards he said, you know what, I have some feedback for you. Okay, thank you. Give it to me. And he said, you know, this was great. Your performance is great. I only have one question. Hit me. Why are you so selfish? I'm not selfish. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are, he said. And I'm saying, what do you mean I'm selfish? What about that? Why am I selfish? And then I said, I know you. I know that you have tons of personal stories that are not private necessarily, but they are personal, and they will bring so much more to the audience. And you don't give them that. You only give them the kind of the generic stories. Well, I mean, that's selfish. And then I told him, you know, I don't find myself very interesting. Ah, he says, you're not selfish, you're stupid, he said to me instead. So, okay, so I got the point. So actually, when I went to Paris to do a European speaker convention talking about this, I talked about making it personal. And then I have that as an unlisted YouTube clip. I don't want to have it open because I do become almost private at one point, and I don't want to share that with the world. But if you want it, let me know and I will send that link to you, because that's also storytelling, especially at the very end and the beginning. You will find it if you want to. It's yours. It's about 16 minutes. I'm going to give it to you, but you don't have to spread it, because again, it's kind of pretty personal. So I believe that it's good to talk about, you know, acting out a bit when it's your story. It's good to act out if you have a dialogue. Be the 2 persons in the dialogue. Then it becomes, you know, it become alive. You know, the whole story becomes much more interesting and rich. I have seen cases where I don't think it's appropriate to act out too much. Do any of you know Madeline Black? Melanie, Granny, a couple of more people know her. Would you say that it would be appropriate for her to change the way she speaks about her gang rape in order to you know, act out? I would say no, because her story in itself is so extremely powerful and strong and moving and depressing that if she added too much of her own kind of acting out skills here, she would lose me. It would be too much for me. I cannot take it. So in her case, talking about this is what she talks about. You know that, guys. She talks about her being a young teenager and 2 guys rape her, you know, the whole night and all that. It's just I get emotional even thinking about it. She needs to calm it down. She needs to take it down quite a lot, because it's such a powerful story in itself. I don't have those stories myself, so I can be more extravagant compared to her, which is all fine. What about dialogue? I want to find out yes or no from you guys. Do you use dialogue in your stories and in your presentations, in your keynotes? Yes or no? Ian, sometimes. Well, sometimes it's yes, not all the time. I get it. Jonathan says yes, sometimes yes. If you want to act out, if you want to have that feeling of kind of getting the emotions up and running, dialogue is a perfect way of doing it, because then you're all of a sudden 2 people or 3 people, and then you can shift between those 2 people and 3 people. And if you do that well, then people will be just engaged in it. Like seeing an episode of Friends where you have Chandler and Joey and you have, you know, Monica and all that. So that's what it is. Yes, sometimes. Yes, sometimes. Okay. You decide yourself, but stories with dialogue becomes even more energetic normally if you tell them the way I'm talking about now, acting out. Like, for instance, hey, you, instead of just, excuse me, you know, things like that will be a big change. Another thing I was thinking about is, what about the story and the truth of the story? Does the story need to be completely true? Or does it not? Eugene is shaking her head a little bit there. No, it doesn't have to be. Can you unmute yourself and tell me how you think? What do you think about that?
I think it depends on the content and it depends on the audience.
Elaborate, please. A little bit more.
I think if it's going to, I think some things need to be said powerfully, but respectfully, and other things can be taken and kind of exaggerated a bit for impact. But it's the subject matter that makes the difference.
Sure, I agree. There's a proverb of some kind saying that every good story has an element of truth, but don't let truth come in the way of a good story. So that's kind of what some scientists will say, no, this doesn't work for me at all. But let me show you an example of that. I have a client in the medtech business, and I'm doing 1-year programs on presentation skills training for spokespersons in that company. I've known Dodie, Dodie Axelsson. She's the one giving me the assignment. I've known her since 20 years back. And when I talked to the group, now the 14 people, about why we started this program and all that, my story was really short. It was more something like, I got a call, and it was Dodie, your colleague, and she said, Antoni, you remember we talked about like 15 years ago how we wanted to have evangelists and do a spokesperson program and all that? And I said, yes, I am now in a position of doing it. Do you want to be part of it? And I said, of course I want to be part of it. Finally, let's do it. That was the short anecdote. In real life, this was a 5-6 emails, 5-6 phone conversation discussion. But if I wanted to talk, if I did that, if I talked about the chronological order of everything we said, it would be so boring. It's like a movie where nothing happens for a long time, you know. So that's why I just condensed it into that short story, which wasn't true when it comes to the exact event, but it was true from the sense that this was the gist of the story. So in order to make the story good, I needed to shorten it down and condense it. That's one way of thinking about stories. I do have my parents-in-law have good friends, and they are old people. And Leonard, the guy that is about 80 years old, he's one of those storytellers that always have a story. And he said something like, so we were walking down the street and 15 young people came towards us, very threatening. And his wife said, they were not 15 people. And then he says, it doesn't matter. And I like that idea, because it was not about how many exact people, exactly how many people it was. It was about the feeling of that, the crowd coming towards them. That's one other example of that. Yeah, I mean, I can talk on forever. This is what I wanted to talk about, but let me just summarize it, and then we can have a discussion instead. I like to find out what you think about things as well. I've seen some things also on the chat. I think that our goal is to facilitate change when we speak. I think that you need memorable content and emotions in order to do that. Content for understanding and emotions for actions, basically. Storytelling is the best way of reaching into somebody and not only reaching out to an audience. And if you want them to be emotionally invested, you probably need to be emotionally invested as well. And I hope that I've given you a couple of ideas about that and the difference between reporting a story and acting out and being inside the story. Yeah. What can you possibly share with us? In my head, the mocking sound, what can you possibly share with this great colleagues, that could be of any value? You tell me, before we go into Q&A, what was valuable from your side out of this 28 minutes that I've been going on now? In the chat, please share. Thank you, Louis. Dialogue. Granny, we need to talk about your thing as well there about the story. Yeah, okay. What else was there? What was valuable? Anything that you could bring that strengthened your existing beliefs, or anything that was new, perhaps? What else is there? Dialogue, reaching in, not only out, bringing appropriate emotions to the story. content and emotion together. Yes, thank you. Provocative questions. Yeah, you can do that as well. Did I do that? Did I ask you any provocative questions now? Can't remember. Reaching in, not only, yeah, well, that's the thing. Adjusting a story, absolutely. Both content and emotion. You know what? I always talked about only emotions before. I said, the only thing you need in order to get actions are people's emotions. But that's not true, because they cannot be emotional about something they don't remember. So you need to have both. Very easy. The use of dialogue. Yes. 2 different ways of telling the story. Thank you. Should we separate truth, myth, legends, and story? Yeah, it's a good question. Let's talk about that, Bruce. Good one. What are the, you can read as well. One of this I'm exploring with my clients is getting them to tell their stories too. Yeah, that's a good one. One of the things I do is sometimes when I do workshops about future, their future, I ask them to tell a story about that future. A story doesn't have to be only about what has happened with you or someone else. It could be what could happen. Put yourself in that situation, and they bring out fabulous stories if you do something like that with a client. It's really interesting, and then they really get it. It's not only about goal setting; it's about actually, being in that story. Choosing to animate or not. Thank you. I had one more. I think it was Leslie. You sent this as a direct message to me, and I don't know if this is a direct message to me. So if you want to have it for everyone, you have to put it into everyone. Otherwise, you and I can have a discussion about your questions later on. Just,
It can be open.
It can be open. Okay, thank you. Can you share more information on how you created the emotional connections? Can you elaborate on the question, Leslie, so I understand more what you mean?
So you're talking about creating this emotional connection with your audience. And obviously you've got some very tried and tested tips that allow you to do that easily. And I was just wondering whether you could share with us what works for you.
From the top of my head, empathy, trying to understand who I have in front of me and what they are thinking about right now. This is actually the number one of the 3 superpowers that I have, that I speak about all the time. Empathy is number 1, because if I understand where you are, I have a better understanding of what I can bring to you. The 2 other ones are energy and clarity. So energy, that's what you need to be believable. Why should you believe me if I don't look like I believe what I'm saying? So energy is about body language and tonality and pitch and all of those things. So voice and body language mostly, but also the words you use sometimes. And then clarity, that's when you want to make people feel smart. So what you want to do is to take away as many misunderstandings as possible, and then be concrete in your language and not too abstract, which means that you take away, you focus on, for instance, analogies, storytelling, and direct numbers and hard facts, but you do it in such a way that they get it. So if you have high energy and high clarity, studies have shown this. This is not something I came up with myself. If you have high energy and high clarity, you get more engaged audience and more engaged people and more engaged employees, if that's what you're into. So that's what you need. And actually, you know what? One of my unique selling points when I do this is that I smile. I enjoy being with you guys, and it shows and it radiates, and people like to be in that positive environment. So I guess that's one of the things as well. And if I can relate anything I say to them, and by the way, I didn't talk about that, but let me do it now. A story without relevance or facts, that's just entertainment. And if you only have facts but no story, it becomes pretty boring. But if you have stories with relevance and facts, then it's just magic, because then people understand why you tell the story. It's not only a separate story, it's a story with a punchline and a meaning that will make you hopefully think about and then change something. So that's what I think is really good about that.